5 reasons why your English group or other language speaking group is not working. Hey guys, it's Geoff of Fluent American, and if you're like me, I've joined a lot of speaking groups before, both as a teacher, but also as a student for different languages and things like that. And one thing I repeatedly found was these sorts of experiences. And I wanted to just see if you're looking at speaking groups, you're trying to improve your English or whatever language you're learning, these are some things that you want to watch out for to help you choose a group that I think is going to be better for helping you progress and improve. Starting with this problem that's extremely common is that speaking groups don't actually become speaking groups. What you'll actually see is that instead of sending audio messages and recordings, what often happens is people resort to writing and texts, which, I get. But it can't replace speaking. Speaking is a spontaneous action. You try to express something. You can't really replicate that experience with typing or texting. So that's something that you want to watch out for if you're trying to choose a speaking group. You want to make sure that they're actually doing speaking. And that's actually something that we do in our group. We don't allow writing. We give you about 24 hours to, if you type, you can keep it in the group, but then after that, it will be deleted. A second very common problem is that there's no actual corrections. This can be because there may not be enough native speakers, enough knowledgeable ones, which we'll talk about in a moment, or it could also just be because that's not the focus of the group. They're just talking, which is fine. That can definitely help fluency, just being able to practice speaking. But if you're trying to improve, then at some point you need to know where you're making mistakes. And how is our group handling it? Well, when you give a response to a prompt that we'll give every day, you'll receive some feedback on suggestions, for instance, for grammar or for vocab, things like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Another issue that a lot of language groups have is that they have a hard time finding enough native speakers to help out. It makes sense. A lot of times native speakers are just unaware that these groups exist, are not interested, or don't have time, whatever the reason. Perfectly valid, but for language learners, that makes the situation difficult because they are trying to sound natural. They're trying to use the language, and if you use it just with other learners, there's a chance that you're just continuing with the same errors and mistakes like we mentioned before. Having that interaction with native speakers can be really helpful, and it's just something that a lot of groups struggle with. Related to this third point is that the native speakers that they may have in the groups may not actually be knowledgeable in how the language works. I think it's a pretty common experience where people don't really understand the language that they speak, especially if it's your first language. You learned things as a kid just from repetition, or you just kind of picked it up naturally. You never really asked why certain things are the way they are. So because you've never really studied aspects like grammar or phrases or vocabulary in depth, it can make it difficult to explain these sorts of functions and structures to language learners. So just because you have native speakers in a group doesn't necessarily mean that they're always the best resource for improving. Another issue that I kept on seeing in different language groups I joined is that the topics are always repeated, especially for larger groups that have 100 or more members. A lot of times conversations are just saying basic things like, oh, hello, hi, where are you from, what do you study, what's your job, things like that. It never actually gets into other topics. So it quickly becomes stale, the vocabulary gets repeated, there's not a whole lot of learning going on because of this. So how is our group going to counter that? Well, every day we're receiving a prompt from IELTS or TOEFL or other speaking exams. So that way every day you get something a little bit fresh. By the way, guys, we also have a group available for pronunciation where you can get feedback every day. One of the last issues that I often see with groups that's related to the previous one is that the conversations stay too basic. A lot of these speaking groups especially favor lower language learners because, again, these topics are often recycled, they're often very low level. You're not going to see a lot of debates, for instance, about government. You're not going to see a lot of argumentation or explanation of ideas, just very basic surface level content. So that, again, is an issue that a lot of groups have. If, though, you're preparing for a test like IELTS or TOEFL, or you're trying to go to an academic setting or a job in another country, obviously your language skills are going to need to be a lot more advanced. So those basic level topics and speaking groups probably are not going to be so helpful in trying to improve. Have other questions about the group? Have other negatives that you've experienced in speaking groups? Let us know in the comments.